Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Sullivan, and I'm excited to introduce ShaKeitha Green, who will be leading our session, InsightMath, the Teacher and Student Experience. ShaKeitha Green is a senior solution strategist based out of Los Angeles, California. She has been with Mind Research Institute for 11 years and in the education field for 18 years. She holds a bachelor's degree in child development and a master's degree in technology-based education. While working at Mind as an education success manager, supporting schools and districts with their implementation of ST Math, ShaKeitha discovered both a great joy for presenting and the importance of connecting with her audience. She has presented in schools and districts nationwide, fostering a love for math in all people. ShaKeitha, I am now passing the mic to you.
Thanks, Melissa, and welcome everyone. So I'm going to dive in and get started. I think it's great that everyone had some time to be here today, and I think we have some fun planned for you. So let's go. So as Melissa mentioned, our session today is InsightMath, the teacher and student experience. So you'll have an opportunity to see things from the teacher side, but also experience InsightMath from the student side as well. So our agenda today, we did our intro already. You'll experience a lesson from grade 1 and then some Q&A time. So without further ado, let's dive in. So a couple different things. One, as you know, InsightMath is going to be that core curriculum that we're launching, and it's going to look the same, but a little different from ST Math. One of the most important things is it does embody ST Math. So students will also experience or continue to play those ST Math games, which you know is neuroscience-based. So if we take a look at a lesson, first and foremost, you'll start with some workshop time. Students will have an opportunity to explore, and then there'll be a reflect and connect section. In addition to that, students will also have additional workshop time where they might do a practice page, a playbook page, or even play some ST Math games. As we dive in a little bit more, you can see the lesson objectives, key lesson questions. There are different parts for each section, and you could expand those, and then you can see the entire lesson as well. So this is that teacher's guide where you have access to see everything prior to actually launching the lesson. Now, let's have some fun. So what you're about to see on the screen is a code. I want everyone in a side screen or a new tab, go ahead and navigate to jet.st. And then once you're there, the code you want to enter is 882924. 882924. All right, I see some people are getting in. Perfect. All right, and anyone just joining, welcome. I'm going to give everyone about 1 to 2 more minutes. And if you just joined, we are navigating in a different tab to jet.st. And then it's going to ask you to enter a code. Your code is 882924. 882924. Hi, Cindy. Go ahead and open a new tab. So use, if you are on a computer, go ahead and open a new tab. And then you want to navigate to jet.st, as Melissa has put in the chat, or you could just click that link. And then the join code is 882924. All right. So let's dive right in. So here we go. We're going to do a lesson today called Brian's Pies. As you'll see, every lesson in InsightMath, they have a launch, explore, reflect, and connect, as I showed you on the actual teacher guide. So in this case, we have Brian. Hi again. My grandpa and I are baking pies for a bake sale. Let's see what that entails. So now you should see on your screen, how can you arrange the pies on the trays? Let's see how fun and creative everyone will be. This is one of my favorite parts. All right, let's see. And make sure you click that send button once you've arranged your pies. All right, they're slowly starting to come in. Perfect. All right, I'm seeing a lot of different things. We have a couple who did it the same. Perfect. All right, let's take a look at some of these. Let's see. I want one of these. Oh, that looks like a good one. Let's take that one. And this one. All right, these are some of the things that were submitted. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Feel free to either unmute or comment in the chat. But what do you notice? Well, let's compare and contrast these. So what do you see that's the same? What do you see that's different? I want to hear from you. Anything that stands out to you. And again, feel free to either type in the chat or unmute. All right. The distribution in A makes your brain happy. Perfect. Some of the pies in B may not get cooked well. Very true. They're a little bit on top of each other. Okay. Let's see. After you did yours, you realized it didn't really ask for all the pies. Lots of room for flexibility. Everyone's is different. D made you laugh. None of them are wrong. All right, Lillian, great point, right? So it didn't actually give you specific instructions of how they wanted you to arrange the pies. It just wanted you to kind of explore, try something out. This gives you a great opportunity to see what your students are thinking or even how they're thinking, right? And so, as you can see, A and D look very different. On A, the student took their time and arranged the pies as close as they could get to being, perfectly away from each other, but making sure all the pies made it to the tray. Whereas D, they just kind of tossed them on there. And if they made it to the tray, great. But if they didn't make it, hey, that was fine too, right? So this is one of those things where it gives you an opportunity to create that space for mathematical discourse with your students, having them talk about what they see as similar with these or what's different. All right. So now that you've gotten an opportunity to arrange the pies, now what I want you to do, this is how the pies were arranged on your tray. You should see how they were arranged on your tray. So create an equation based on how you arrange the pies. And again, don't forget to click that send button. Oh, I just saw your comment, Jen. You didn't like that the instructions weren't specific. Maybe that's part of the process, though. Maybe they're not specific on purpose. Maybe they're not specific because you want students to explore and be a little creative. But I do understand for some that is just wild, right? You want those specific instructions that tell students, this is what you do, this is what I'm looking for. And in this case, we were really looking for them to explore and have fun with the platform. All right, let's see what we are getting submitted. Perfect. All right. So what you'll notice here, it's also going to do the math for you to see, whether they did the math correctly or not so much. It looks like everyone's doing 3 and 7. Actually, I'm losing my mind a little bit. That's how they were arranged. So you created that based on how they were arranged. Perfect. Looks like someone just created what they wanted. No problem. But one of the things you can see is as the students are working through the problems or playing, you can also see what they're doing. You can see how they're doing, what they're working on, and we're going to continue to look at some of those features as well as we keep going. So now, what happens if we move one pie to the other tray? What happens here? Okay, like that you can move the pie over now. How does this change what you typed in the first time as far as what your equation was? Total stays the same, but the add-ins will change. That's also a great conversation to have with your students, right? Talking about how you can adjust the add-ins and still have the same total at the end. And what are the different add-ins that make up or that can get students to 10, right? Helping them really understand and explore which add-ins automatically get them to 10. Let's see, Jen, student must recognize that they need to change their numbers. Absolutely, right? So they're not only changing or moving a pie, but they're also having to adjust those numbers. But again, still keeping that same solution of 10. All right, let's keep exploring. So now let's take a minute and either type into the chat or unmute just like before. What do you notice? Let's see, they both equal 10. They're the same solution. Perfect. So as you can see, the screen itself didn't change per se, but it gave the student the flexibility to move that pie. So all of a sudden, they are very much interacting with the platform, but also allowing them to figure out, okay, where am I moving a pie? How will this adjust? Right? Great point, Noemi. Students feel they have a choice in how to lay out the pies, and everyone still gets the same answer. Absolutely. And that's an important part as well. You bring up that choice, that ability for them to really be in charge of their learning, them to interact with the system, things like that. All right, perfect, perfect. So now we have a bigger problem, right? Now Brian has sold some pies. Now he only has this many pies. What are you creating from this? And then how does this change what you've already been working on? I love it. I noticed on some of your screens who have your cameras on, you actually did look all the way up. But it's a great feature to allow, let's say the students are getting a little noisy, they're not focusing. You can take charge of their screens and say, hey, let's bring it back. Let's get back to focusing on what the task is at hand. All right. So Robert brings up a great point. Different equation and solution, right? And then you can also have the conversation with students, knowing that your solution is different from the previous one. How many pies did get sold, right? Because now we went from 10 as our solution to 9. So you could ask the students, how many pies got sold? I want to make sure we have enough time to get to all the features. All right. So someone moved some pies. What happened? Now, this also, I want you to think about what's happening on the screen. Go ahead and type it to the chat or even unmute. What's happening on the screen? The sign is covering some pies. How does that change things? So again, we're asking students to think, beyond what they're seeing on the screen at this point. They still have that same solution of 9. They can see all the pies on the right tray, but the left tray, not necessarily. And so all of a sudden, we're asking them to not only figure out how many pies are on the left tray, but to also figure that out based on the pies that are on the right tray in the solution. So really making them step it up a notch. Perfect. And I see those comments coming in the chat. Appreciate it. So now, same thing as we looked at before, what do you notice? If we compare and contrast these two screens now, what do you notice? Okay. Different expression, but same solution. Pretty similar to what we did before, right? So really making sure they understand, but again, giving them that opportunity to compare and contrast of what they're seeing. Really dive into what they're noticing about the equations that they're coming up with. All right. So here we go. Now's your chance to shine. Show the missing pies. And this is one of those, for some, definitely not enough instructions, but again, leaning into allowing students to explore, leaning into allowing them to connect with the math and really dive in and be in charge of that learning for themselves. All right, we have some answers coming in. Ooh, I think this is a good time for another compare and contrast. I saw some interesting things take place here. Let's just do these two for now. All right, here we go. Compare and contrast. What do we notice here? What's the same? What's different? There's some pies that aren't on the tray, but are the equations still equal? Are there still the same amount of pies on each side of that equal sign? Yeah, student A took it a step further. Student A wanted a little bit of a challenge and wanted to have some fun with the pies, right? Perfect. Now, for both of these, are both sides of equal sign equal? Did they actually do the task? Did each of these students do the task? Right? Yeah, they did. They just did it very differently. Perfect. All right, let's keep going. All right, so now you're getting an opportunity to not only show those missing pies, but also create those two equations. And again, very similar to what you were already working on, right? We've done this. We were doing it with 10, figuring out what add-ins equal 10. Now we're doing it with 5. And for some, if they add additional pies, it could be any number they choose. All right, let's see what's coming in.
Do students ever get frustrated with the fact that they can't see, like the 110 was kind of covered up, so they couldn't really see there were 3. Is the initial reaction sometimes, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my computer, I can't see the tray?
Yeah, I mean, some students might say that, and then you can that's your opportunity to explain that. You're asking them to think a little further about the situation. You're asking them to think beyond what they can actually see.
So I guess it would be important for teachers to prepare them for that, for people who are a little OCD about things.
Maybe, but maybe not, because it's also a great conversation to have if the question comes up with all students in the classroom, not just that student. So it's a learning opportunity in itself. Um, because for some it may be an issue, for some it won't. But for students who it's not an issue for, it'll be great for them to hear why it's an issue for the other students. And again, a great learning opportunity. But great question, Beth. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So we got quite a few responses in. As you can see, also, a great thing that also exists for this is, let's say you're not really wanting to show those students' names and you want to make sure that you can keep the students anonymous. We have a feature where you can change their names to famous mathematicians. It does it automatically so that you don't have to know which students you're seeing in that moment. But when you're presenting, you can have that screen open to actually see who they are. All right, so just to kind of keep students feeling very comfortable and confident in interacting. All right, so now it's your opportunity to play. Workshop time usually lasts about 10 to 15 minutes, but the biggest focus about it is you want to see, are students understanding the content, right? Are students getting what you've been working on? Are they able to connect the dots? All right, so now you have an opportunity to just dive right in and play. All right. So on this screen, you can see, it gives you some data to look at, right? But the biggest part, or the most important part we're looking to see, we want to see our students understanding the content, right? And so that's where you get that green bar. That green bar indicates, hey, they've done 4 problems. They understand what's happening. This gives you that rate at which they're completing them and then the number of tries. This is one of those opportunities that I want you to think about where they don't need to do 100 problems on a page. They don't need to do, 20, 30 problems to really show that they understand what's happening. All they need to do is a couple of them. If you notice you have some students who, time has elapsed and they've done none, or you're seeing where they're struggling, they're taking several tries to get it. It's a great opportunity for you to understand, hey, this student doesn't get it. So maybe they need a little one-on-one time with me after this lesson or during the workshop time. Maybe they need an opportunity to, understand better. Something's missing, right? But this gives you that information. And then once students have had an opportunity to do the workshop time, there's also a practice page with this lesson. Now, some of the lessons have a practice page. Some of the lessons have, that workshop time where they're actually on their device. Some of them have something we call a playbook page. Some of them have what's called tools, tasks, and templates. Other opportunities to practice what they've learned. I want you to pay attention to what you're seeing on the screen. What stands out about this practice page? Go ahead and type into the chat. What do you notice is different from probably a lot of practice pages you might see when students are really working on fully understanding a concept? All right, moves from conceptual to procedural, only 3 problems. Only a few problems, concrete to abstract, small number of questions. Yes, all of these answers coming in. Again, as I mentioned before, we don't need a page of 10, 15 problems for them to understand it. We just want to know that they get what's going on, that they understand that transition from the visuals, which they were seeing in the games and playing with the pies and things on the screen, to that symbolic, right? And then that's it, right? Again, just a few. This is one of those opportunities or instances where less is more. All right. So now I want to dive into some of the things we didn't dive into prior to the lesson, now that you've had an opportunity to experience it. So let's take a look here. This is the lesson, the teacher's guide. As you can see, the initial workshop time, about 5 minutes. The time to explore when you're playing that game and you're moving the pies and whatnot, about 20 minutes. Reflect and connect, about 5 minutes. And then again, that workshop time. Now, this workshop time includes them playing the game at the end where they were playing the critter game and they're getting to, 4 correct, and then moving on to that actual practice page. You can see lesson objectives, key lesson questions. All of these are expandable where you can see if there are specific pages attached to that lesson. So in this case, we can see there's a practice page. You can click on it and you're able to see right there what that practice page is. And same thing, the answer key. So don't worry, you don't have to sit there and figure it out. All right, we can see the standards that would be addressed, differentiation, if any, and then each aspect of the lesson. We can see that launch, explore, which we've all talked about, the reflect and connect, and then again, that workshop time. All right. All right, let's get back in here. Same thing, when you first go into the lesson, you can see all of those aspects as well. So many different places where you can dive in to really understand what the lesson is asking, what's going on, each part of it. If we wanted to go back to a specific part of the lesson, you can click that and go right back to it. Another beautiful aspect that helps, there are teacher notes attached to every part of the lesson. So as a teacher, let's say you're seeing something that's unfamiliar to you, especially when it comes to certain ST math games. The questions are here for you to be able to ask the students. It tells you details about the lesson, look fors, but then also discourse questions. Really those open-ended questions to help students be fully engaged in the conversation, but also putting them in charge of that learning, right? Asking them questions so that they're telling you more information than you're telling them. Really having that space for mathematical discourse for those students. And I know some of you might be wondering, well, are the questions the same on every single screen? Like, are they exactly the same? Well, here's some discourse questions for this one. And as we can see, we move on to this screen and there aren't any. But then we move on to the next screen and then we have different discourse questions. So the questions that are there in the teacher notes are specifically for them. Okay. Another thing you might be asking, well, I love this teacher notes thing, but I don't want students to see it. I just want, them to see the screens. There's also a feature for that where you can basically what you're presenting is the presenter view and you can have a controller view, which allows you to show those things from your screen. So again, giving you that opportunity to interact with students, but also making sure they know that you're on the same page, you're all learning in that process, but you're also giving them that space for mathematical discourse. You're going to hear me say that a few times over the next like 2 or 3 minutes because it's so important. You want students to be in charge of their learning. You want students to be actively engaged, but the big picture is you want them to tell you about the math, talk to you about what they're seeing, not just you telling them. And if we think about it, that's that difference between a student getting an aha moment and someone taking it away. If a student gets that aha moment, it sticks. They're able to use that information later. But as educators, if we take that aha moment away, the next time they're just looking for someone to help them and solve the problem for them. And I think we can all agree when we say students have developed this learned helplessness, right? They are looking for someone to hold their hand throughout the situation, to do it for them. And that's what this does not do. It's not doing it for them. They have to do it themselves. And that's what we want, for them to be in charge of their learning. All right. Let's see. So as we begin to wrap up this lesson, I want to definitely give you an opportunity to ask some questions. I left some time for questions, but also feel free to either unmute or chime into the chat. Is there something you want to see more of, like within this lesson? Was there something you need me to pull back up so that you can kind of dissect it a bit?
I thank you for this. I really like the way you wrapped it up, ShaKeitha. It was really a great way to wrap it up about the learned helplessness. It was really, really nice to think about. You know what, as a person who does not know the product as well as some people do, because I really was hired for renewals and never got to know the deep down parts of it. When it gets to the higher levels, when you say, what do we need to see more of? I think it gets more complicated and more difficult to figure out how to navigate. So let's say it's a 5th or 6th grade level. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that would be something to see at maybe not today, but another time to really explore those higher level math levels. Thank you.
You're welcome. One thing to keep in mind, InsightMath really utilizes ST-Math. And so with a lot of it, it's still embodying all the things that ST-Math really specializes in, right? That neuroscience research and really giving those opportunities for students to conceptually understand math and not just memorize algorithms.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
In terms of the curriculum itself, would physical manipulatives be included with that? Or would it be something that is just done on the computer screen? What is kind of like the overall look like in terms of a hands-on aspect?
Great question. Thank you. So depending on the grade level, there will be, I don't want to say 50-50 split, but there are lessons that are on platform and lessons that are off platform. And there are manipulatives that are a part of it. But again, there are some lessons where the teacher is projecting, but the students are not actually logging in because they might be doing something hands-on with manipulatives, this or that. So I don't want to give you a specific percentage, but the lower grade levels have more off-platform lessons and the higher grade levels have more on-platform lessons.
That's
But there's
perfect.
somewhere in between, like 50-50,
Okay.
give or take.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question that's in addition to that kind of, in terms of from like an intervention perspective, will it depend on what your district purchases in terms of if you have access to like the TK and the pre-K? Is there TK pre-K coming with this curriculum?
So with the curriculum, currently we are doing K6. But remember, ST Math itself does have an actual curriculum for pre-K and TK. And as we know, pre-K, TK, they don't have that same attention span. In addition to that attention span, they may not be able to manipulate the screen, type those things in. So our pre-K, TK curriculum is pretty set already. And it's an ST Math curriculum.
One thing that we've run into with our current curriculum and our students population is that they're coming in with little number sense with no preschool. And so with our current curriculum, we don't have anywhere where we can go lower to build that in terms of like their intervention set. So I just wasn't sure what that looked like from an ST Math and InsightMath perspective with it. So that was just why I asked, because we're struggling to find something for that. So I just wasn't sure if there was something included.
No, totally understand. So when it comes to InsightMath, as I mentioned, we are starting with K6, and it's a little different depending on where you're located. But our pre-K and TK programs, they have all those things that you're mentioning, that intervention aspect and things like that. Students, it's an actual, full-on curriculum. They're not just on the device, but there's chance involves, lesson plans and things like that, school to home connections, what have you, to give students that opportunity to really conceptually understand math, and you're able to kind of set that foundation. And so if that's something you're interested in, feel free to leave a message in I think in Hoover or what have you, and just say you're interested pre-K, TK, you want to learn more, and we can try to set up something for you so that you can get an opportunity to see what it's about.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Noemi in Far West Texas.
Hi.
Could I pipe something in real quick?
Absolutely.
I'm at a campus where we have pre-K, kinder, and first. And we we have a different curriculum, right? But I was going to say that our pre-K kids are totally thriving on ST Math. And every year that we've used it, we have several kids that actually finish their journey. And this year, we have some of our kids that come from our SPED unit and then spend part of the day with our pre-K classes. Some of those kids are even getting onto this ST Math, and they're getting it. And so I just wanted to say that at our campus, we've been using it because it's HQIM, for us. And we have a different curriculum, but this is what we supplement. And we dedicate 30 minutes a day for our kids, and a little bit longer for the older grade levels. But just for those that are asking, how does it work? Does it help them? It's amazing. The kids are really doing well.
Thanks, Noemi.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any additional questions? All right, I'm not seeing anything come in the chat. Well, I think the least I can do is let you keep playing some games, right? All right. And then for those of you who this is your first opportunity getting a chance to see Insight Math, but you know your district might be interested in a demo or what have you, don't hesitate to reach out to your EPM or ESM so that they can get that set up for you. All right, we have about 5 more minutes left in this session. I did want to leave, like I said, some time for questions. So if anything pops in your head, feel free to ask. Thank you. And Noemi, just out of curiosity, are you using the pre-K curriculum or just the digital aspect? Just the ST Math digital?
We're just using the digital because we use Frog Street for their other curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. I do have one question.
Absolutely.
You know, the students that are finishing, like, for example, in pre-K, I realize there's a pre-K and a TK, right? Before you
Right.
do that. And so I didn't realize that the TK is kind of like pre-K, or am I seeing that wrong?
No, they're very similar because also pre-K and TK, as far as, you know, those grade levels, they're pretty similar as well.
Mhm.
But that the differences you'll see are really what are embodied in the actual curriculum, because there's a lot of different components that are part of the curriculum as well.
So looking at that, I see where I kind of messed up here, but the kids that finished in pre-K, instead of moving them to kinder after they did their journey and the bonus, I sent them to the TK. I should have probably skipped that and gone kinder, right?
Either or is fine. I mean, one of the great things is that they're just getting additional practice to really understand those things, because in some of the cases, some of the things they might have struggled on, now they're getting that opportunity to fully understand them. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, the TK has a little bit more curriculum than the pre-K. So both are an option, and it's just redefining, because those pre-K students, they probably will go straight on to kindergarten. And so in that case, they'll have access to the kindergarten curriculum at that point. So giving them some TK is just going to help them. It won't hurt them.
Okay, last question. My first graders are going to be leaving our campus to another campus next year. Some of them are already done with their first grade, the whole journey. I kept them on doing the what is it, the bonus, and then there's a challenge, right?
Right.
So once they get through the whole bonus, some of them get stuck on the challenge and get really frustrated. At that point, is it okay to move them up to second, even though they're going to be starting second next year?
So I would want to look at all of their data to see if they struggled on anything in first grade, and maybe reassign those objectives first, because we want to make sure they understand those components first and foremost. Next, I would look on our ST Math help site, where you can find options for early finishers, some options to do with students before just moving them up, because the jump from first to second grade is a little different than what they've been experiencing. Remember, once students start second grade curriculum, they're also introduced to quizzes. And so that's very different from the students who are in first grade who have not been taking those quizzes.
Okay, that's something I didn't know. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Melissa. And just to finish us out, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of the user conference, and thank you, everyone.